Section 2 of Kidnapped in London by Sun Yat-sen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Matthew McNaughton. Section 2. Chapter 3. My Imprisonment. Sir Halliday then left the room, shut the door, and locked it, and I was a prisoner under lock and key. Shortly afterwards I was disturbed by the sound of carpentry at the door of my room, and found that an additional lock was being fixed thereto. Outside the door was stationed a guard of never less than 2 people, one of whom was a European. Sometimes a third guard was added. During the first 24 hours the Chinese guards at the door frequently came in and spoke to me in their own dialect, which I understood fairly well. They did not give me any information as to my imprisonment, nor did I ask them any questions, further than that the old gentleman who had locked me up was Sir Halliday Macartney, the Ma Tai Yun, as they called him, Ma standing for Macartney, Tai Yun being the equivalent for His Excellency. This is in the same category with the name under which the Chinese minister passes here, Kung Tai Yun. Kung is his family name or surname. Tai Yun indicates his title, meaning His Excellency. He never gives his real name in public matters, thereby compelling every foreigner to unconsciously style him, quote, His Excellency. I often wonder if he deals with the British government under this cognomen solely. If he does, it is a disparagement and slight that is meant. Court and diplomatic etiquette in China is so nice that the mere inflection of a syllable is quite enough to change the meaning of any communication to the foreigner from a compliment to a slight. This is constantly striven after in all dealings with foreigners, and it requires a very good knowledge of Chinese literature and culture indeed to know that any message delivered to a foreigner does not leave the Chinese diplomatist hugging himself with delight at having insulted a foreigner of high rank without his knowing it. To the people around him he thereby shows his own preeminence, and how the, quote, foreign devils, the Yonghuaiji, are his inferiors. Several hours after my imprisonment, one of the guard came into my room and told me that Sir Halliday Macartney had ordered him to search me. He proceeded to take my keys, pencil, and knife. He did not find my pocket, in which I had a few banknotes, but he took the few unimportant papers I had. They asked me what food I wanted, and, at my request, brought me some milk, which I drank. During the day 2 English servants came to light the fire, bring coals, and sweep the room. I asked the first who came to take a letter out for me, and being promised that this would be done, I wrote a note addressed to Mr. Cantlie, 46 Devonshire Street West. When the second servant came, I did the same thing. I did not, of course, know till later what had happened to my letters, but both men said they had sent them. That Sunday evening an Englishwoman came in to make up my bed. I did not address her at all. All that night I had no sleep, and lay with my clothes on. On the following day, Monday, 12th October, the 2 English servants came again to attend to the room, and brought coals, water, and food. One said he had sent the note with which I had entrusted him, while the other, Cole, said he could not get out to do so. I suspected, however, that my notes had never reached their destination. On Tuesday the 13th I again asked the younger manservant, not Cole, if he had delivered my letter and had seen Mr. Cantlie. He said he had, but as I still doubted him, he swore he had seen Mr. Cantlie, who, on receiving the note, said, quote, All right. Having no more paper, I wrote with pencil on the corner of my handkerchief and asked him to take it to my friend. At the same time I put a half-sovereign in his hand and hoped for the best. I was dubious about his good faith, and I found that my suspicions were but too well-founded, for I ascertained subsequently he went immediately to his employers and disclosed all. On the 4th day of my imprisonment, Mr. Tang, as he is called, came to see me, and I recognized in him the man who had kidnapped me. He sat down and proceeded to converse with me. "When I last saw you," he began, "and took you in here, I did so as part of my official duty. I now come to talk with you as a friend. You had better confess that you are Sun Wen. It is no use denying it. Everything is settled." In a vein of sarcastic pseudo-flattery he continued, "You are well known in China. The Emperor and the Zhongli Yamen are well acquainted with your history. It is surely worth your while dying with so distinguished a name as you have made for yourself upon you." This is a species of Oriental flattery scarcely perhaps to be appreciated by Western minds, but it is considered everything in China, how and under what name and reputation you die. "Your being here," he proceeded, "means life or death. Do you know that?" "How?" I asked. "This is England, not China." "What do you propose to do with me? If you wish extradition, you must let my imprisonment be known to the British government, and I do not think the government of this country will give me up." "We are not going to ask legal extradition for you," he replied. "Everything is ready. The steamer is engaged. You are to be bound and gagged and taken from here so that there will be no disturbance. And you will be placed on board in safe keeping. Outside Hong Kong harbor there will be a Chinese gunboat to meet you, and you will be transferred to that and taken to Canton for trial and execution." I pointed out that this would be a risky proceeding, as I might have the chance of communicating with the English on board on the way. This, however, Tong declared would be impossible, as, said he, "you will be as carefully guarded as you are here, so that all possibility of escape will be cut off." I then suggested that the officers on board might not be of the same mind as my captors, and that some of them might sympathize with me and help me. "The steamboat company," replied Tong, "are friends of Sir Halliday Macartney's and will do what they are told." In reply to my questions, he told me that I should be taken by one of the Glen line of steamers, but that my departure would not take place that week. This was October 14th, as the minister was unwilling to go to the expense of exclusively chartering the steamer, and he wished to have the cargo shipped first, so that only the passenger tickets would have to be paid for. "Sometime next week," he added, "the cargo will be embarked and you will go then." On my remarking that this was a very difficult plan to put into execution, he merely said, "Were we afraid of that, we could kill you here, because this is China, and no one can interfere with us in the legation." For my edification and consolation, he then quoted the case of a Korean patriot who, escaping from Korea to Japan, was induced by a countryman of his to go to Shanghai, where he was put to death in the British concession. His dead body was sent back by the Chinese to Korea for punishment, and on arrival there it was decapitated, while the murderer was rewarded and given a high political post. Tong was evidently fondly cherishing the belief that he would be similarly promoted by his government for arresting me and securing my death. I asked him why he should be so cruel, to which he replied, "This is by order of the Emperor, who wants you captured at any price, alive or dead." I urged that the Korean case was one of the causes of the Japanese War, and that my capture and execution might lead to further trouble and great complications. "The British government," I said, "may ask for the punishment of all the members of this legation, and, as you are a countryman of mine, my people in the province of Guangdong may revenge themselves on you and your family for your treatment of me." He then changed his tone, desisted from his arrogant utterances, and remarked that all he was doing was by the direction of the legation, and that he was merely warning me in a friendly way of my plight. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Pleading with my jailers for life. At 12 o'clock the same night, Tong returned to my room and reopened the subject. I asked him, if he was really a friend of mine, what he could do to help me. "That is what I came back for," he replied, "and I want to do all I can, and will let you out by and by. Meantime," he continued, "I am getting the locksmith to make 2 duplicate keys, one for your room and one for the front door." Tong had to take this step, he said, as the keys were kept by the confidential servant of the minister who would not part with them. To my inquiry as to when he could let me out, He stated that it would be impossible till the following day, and that he could probably manage it at 2 a.m. Friday morning. As he left the room, he counseled me to be ready to get out on the Friday. After his departure, I wrote down a few words on a paper to give to the servants to take to Mr. Cantlie. Next morning, Thursday, October 15th, I gave the note to the servant, but as Tong told me on the afternoon of that day, it was handed by the servant to the legation authorities. Tong declared that by my action I had spoiled all his plans for rescuing me, and that Sir Halliday Macartney had scolded him very much for telling me how they intended to dispose of me. I thereupon asked him if there was any hope for my life, to which he replied, "Yes, there is still great hope, but you must do what I tell you." He advised me to write to the minister asking for mercy. This I agreed to do, and asked for pen, ink, and paper. These Tong told Cole to bring me. I asked, however, that Chinese ink and paper should be supplied me, as I could not write to the Chinese minister in English. To this Tong replied, "Oh, English is best, for the minister is but a figurehead, everything is in Macartney's hands, and you had better write to him." When I asked what I should write, he said, "You must deny that you had anything to do with the Canton plot, declare that you were wrongly accused by the mandarins, and that you came to the legation to ask for redress." I wrote to his dictation a long letter to this effect in Tong's presence. Having addressed the folded paper to Sir Halliday Macartney, whose name Tong spelt for me, as I did not know how, I handed it to Tong, who went off with it in his possession, and I never saw the intriguer again. This was no doubt a very stupid thing to have done, as I thereby furnished my enemies with documentary evidence that I had come voluntarily to the legation. But as a dying man will clutch at anything, so I, in my strait, was easily imposed upon. Tong had informed me that all my notes had been given up by the servants, so that none of them had reached my friends outside. I then lost all hope, and was persuaded that I was face to face with death. During the week I had written statements of my plight on any scraps of paper I could get and thrown them out of the window. I had at first given them to the servants to throw out, as my window did not look out on the street, but it was evident all of them had been retained. I therefore attempted to throw them out at my own window myself, and by a lucky shot one fell on the leads of the back premises of the next house. In order to make these missives travel further, I weighted them with coppers, and when these were exhausted, 2-shilling pieces, which, in spite of the search, I had managed to retain on my person. When the note fell on the next house, I was in hopes that the occupants might get it. One of the other notes, striking a rope, fell down immediately outside my window. I requested a servant, not Cole, to pick it up and give it to me, but instead of doing so he told the Chinese guards about it, and they picked it up. Whilst searching about, the letter on the leads of the next house caught their attention, and climbing over they got possession of that also, so that I was bereft of that hope too. These notes they took to their masters. I was now in a worse plight than ever, for they screwed up my window, and my sole means of communication with the outside world seemed gone. My despair was complete, and only by prayer to God could I gain any comfort. Still the dreary days and still more dreary nights wore on, and but for the comfort afforded me by prayer, I believe I should have gone mad. After my release, I related to Mr. Cantlie how prayer was my one hope, and told him how I should never forget the feeling that seemed to take possession of me as I rose from my knees on the morning of Friday, October 16th, a feeling of calmness, hopefulness, and confidence that assured me my prayer was heard, and filled me with hope that all would yet be well. I therefore resolved to redouble my efforts, and made a determined advance to Cole, beseeching him to help me. When he came in, I asked him, "Can you do anything for me?" His reply was the question, "What are you?" "A political refugee from China," I told him. As he did not seem to quite grasp my meaning, I asked him if he had heard much about the Armenians. He said he had, So I followed up this line by telling him that just as the Sultan of Turkey wished to kill all the Christians of Armenia, so the Emperor of China wished to kill me because I was a Christian and one of a party that was striving to secure good government for China. All English people, I said, sympathize with the Armenians, and I do not doubt they would have the same feeling towards me if they knew my condition. He remarked that he did not know whether the English government would help me, but I replied that they would certainly do so. Otherwise the Chinese Legation would not confine me so strictly, but would openly ask the British government for my legal extradition. My life, I said to him, is in your hands. If you let the matter be known outside, I shall be saved. If not, I shall certainly be executed. Is it good to save a life or to take it? Whether is it more important to regard your duty to God or to your master, to honor the just British or the corrupt Chinese government? I pleaded with him to think over what I had said and to give me an answer next time he came and tell me truly whether he would help me or not. He went away, and I did not see him till next morning. It may well be imagined how eager I was to learn his decision. While engaged putting coals on the fire, he pointed to a paper he had placed in the coal scuttle. On the contents of that paper my life seemed to depend. Would it prove a messenger of hope, or would the door of hope again be shut in my face? Immediately he left the room, I picked it up and read, "I will try to take a letter to your friend. You must not write it at the table, as you can be seen through the keyhole, and the guards outside watch you constantly. You must write it on your bed." I then lay down on my bed, with my face to the wall, and wrote on a visiting card to Mr. Cantlie. At noon Cole came in again, and I pointed to where my note was. He went and picked it up, and I gave him all the money I had about me, £20. Mr. Cantley's note in reply was placed by Cole behind the coal scuttle, and by a significant glance he indicated there was something there for me. When he had gone, I anxiously picked it up and was overjoyed to read the words, "Cheer up! The government is working on your behalf, and you will be free in a few days." Then I knew God had answered my prayer. During all this time I had never taken off my clothes. Sleep came but seldom, only in snatches, and these very troubled. Not until I received my friend's cheering news did I get a semblance of real rest. My greatest dread was the evil that would befall the cause for which I had been fighting, and the consequences that would ensue were I taken to China and killed. Once the Chinese got me there, they would publish it abroad that I had been given up by the British government in due legal fashion, and that there was no refuge in British territory for any of the other offenders. The members of the party will remember the part played by England in the Taiping Rebellion, and how, by English interference, that great national and Christian revolution was put down. Had I been taken to China to be executed, the people would have once more believed that the revolution was again being fought with the aid of Britain, and all hopes of success would be gone. Had the Chinese Legation got my papers from my lodgings, further complications might have resulted to the detriment of many friends. This danger, it turned out, had been carefully guarded against by a thoughtful lady. Mrs. Cantlie, on her own responsibility, had gone to my lodgings, carefully collected my papers and correspondence, and within a few hours of her becoming acquainted with my imprisonment, there and then destroyed them. If some of my friends in various parts of the world have had no reply to their letters, they must blame this considerate lady for her wise and prompt action, and forgive my not having answered them, as I am minus their addresses and in many cases do not even know their names. Should the Chinese authorities again entrap me, they will find no papers whereby my associates can be made known to them. I luckily did not think of poison in my food, but my state of mind was such that food was repulsive to me. I could only get down liquid nourishment, such as milk and tea, and occasionally an egg. Only when my friend's note reached me could I either eat or sleep. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The part my friends played. Outside the legation, I of course knew nothing of what was going on. All my appeals, all my winged scraps I had thrown out at the window, all my letters I had handed officially to Sir Halliday Macartney and Tong, I knew were useless, and worse than useless, for they but increased the closeness of my guard and rendered communication with my friends more and more an impossibility. However, my final appeal on Friday morning, October 16th, had made an impression, for it was after that date that Cole began to interest himself in my behalf. Cole's wife had a good deal to do with the initiative, and it was Mrs. Cole who wrote a letter to Mr. Cantlie on Saturday, October 17th, 1896, and so set the machinery going. The note reached Devonshire Street at 11 p.m. Imagine the doctor's feelings when he read the following, quote, "There is a friend of yours imprisoned in the Chinese Legation here since last Sunday. They intend sending him out to China, where it is certain they will hang him. It is very sad for the poor man, and unless something is done at once he will be taken away and no one will know it. I dare not sign my name, but this is the truth, so believe what I say. Whatever you do must be done at once, or it will be too late. His name is, I believe, Lin Yin Sen." End quote. No time was evidently to be lost. Late as it was, after ascertaining Sir Halliday Macartney's address, Mr. Cantlie set out to find him. He little knew that he was going straight to the head center of all this disgraceful proceeding. Luckily or unluckily for me, one will never know which, he found the house, 3 Harley Place, shut up. It was 11:15 p.m. on Saturday night, and the policeman on duty in the Marylebone Road eyed him rather suspiciously as he emerged from the compound in which the house stands. The policeman said that the house was shut up for 6 months, the family having gone to the country. Mr. Cantlie asked how he knew all this, and the policeman retorted that there had been a burglary attempted 3 nights previously which led to close enquiries who the tenants were. Therefore, the information he had, namely a 6 months, quote, anticipated absence, was evidently definite and precise. Mr. Cantlie next drove to Marylebone Lane Police Office and laid the matter before the inspector on duty. He next went to Scotland Yard and asked to see the officer in charge. A detective inspector received him in a private room and consented to take down his evidence. The difficulty was to get anyone to believe so improbable a story. The police authority politely listened to the extraordinary narrative, but declared that it was impossible for Scotland Yard to take the initiative, and Mr. Cantlie found himself in the street about 1 a.m. in no better plight than when he set out. Next morning Mr. Cantlie went to Kensington to consult with a friend as to whether or not there was any good in asking the head of the Chinese customs in London to approach the legation privately and induce them to reconsider their imprudent action and ill-advised step. Not receiving encouragement in that direction, he went again to 3 Harley Place in hopes that at least a caretaker would be in possession, and in a position to at least tell where Sir Halliday Macartney could be found or reached by telegram. Beyond the confirmation of the policeman's story that burglary had been attempted, by seeing the evidence of, quote, jemmies used to break open the door, no clue could be found as to where this astute orientalized diplomatist was to be unearthed. Mr. Cantlie then proceeded to Dr. Manson's house, and there, at his front door, he saw a man who proved to be Cole, my attendant at the legation. The poor man had at last summoned up courage to disclose the secret of my imprisonment, and in fear and trembling sought out Mr. Cantlie at his house. But being told he had gone to Dr. Manson's, he went on there and met both the doctors together. Cole then presented 2 cards I had addressed to Mr. Cantlie, stating, quote, "I was kidnapped on Sunday last by 2 Chinamen and forcibly taken into the Chinese Legation. I am imprisoned, and in a day or 2 I am to be shipped off to China on board a specially chartered vessel. I am certain to be beheaded. Oh, woe is me." End quote. Dr. Manson heartily joined with his friend in his attempt to rescue me, and proceeded to interrogate Cole. Mr. Cantlie remarked, "Oh, if Sir Halliday Macartney were only in town, it would be all right. It is a pity he is away. Where can we find him?" Cole immediately retorted, "Sir Halliday is in town. He comes to the legation every day. It was Sir Halliday who locked Sun in his room and placed me in charge, with directions to keep a strict guard over the door, that he should have no means of escape." This information was startling and placed the difficulty of release on a still more precarious footing. The proceedings would have to be still more carefully undertaken, and the highest authorities would have to be called in were these crafty and masterful men to be outwitted. Cole, in answer to further interrogations, said that it was given out in the legation that I was a lunatic, that I was to be removed to China on the following Tuesday, that was in 2 days more, that he did not know by what line of ships I was going, but a man of the name of MacGregor in the city had something to do with it. It also came out that 2 or 3 men dressed as Chinese sailors had been to the legation during the week, and Cole had no doubt their visit had something to do with my removal, as he had never seen men of that description in the house before. Cole left, taking a card with the names of my 2 friends upon it to deliver to me, in the hopes that its advent would allay my fears and serve as a guarantee that Cole was actually working on my behalf at last. The 2 doctors then set out to Scotland Yard to try the effects of a further appeal in that direction. The inspector on duty remarked, "You were here at 12:30 a.m. this morning. I'm afraid it is no use your coming here again so soon." The paramount difficulty was to know where to go to represent the fact that a man's life was in danger, that the laws of the country were being outraged, that a man was to be practically given over in the metropolis of the British Empire to be murdered. On quitting the premises, they took counsel together and decided to invade the precincts of the Foreign Office. They were told the resident clerk would see them at 5 p.m. At that hour they were received and delivered their romantic tale to the willing ears of the courteous official. Being Sunday, of course nothing further could be done, but they were told that the statement would be laid before a higher authority on the following day. But time was pressing, and what was to be done? That night might see the tragedy completed and the prisoner removed on board a vessel bound for China. What was most dreaded was that a foreign ship would be selected, and under a foreign flag the British authorities were powerless. The last hope was that if I were removed before they succeeded in rousing the authorities, and the vessel actually got away, that it might be stopped and searched in the Suez Canal. But were I shipped on board a vessel under a flag other than British, this hope would prove a delusion. With this dread upon them, they decided to take the decisive step of going to the legation and telling the Chinese that they were acquainted with the fact that Sun was a prisoner in their hands, and that the British government and the police knew of their intention to remove him to China for execution. Dr. Manson decided he should go alone, as Mr. Cantlie's name in connection with Sun's was well known at the legation. Accordingly, Dr. Manson called alone at 49 Portland Place. The powdered footman at the door was asked to call one of the English-speaking Chinamen. Presently the Chinese interpreter, my captor and tormentor, Tong himself, appeared. Dr. Manson said he wanted to see Sun Yat-sen. A puzzled expression fell over Tong's face, as though seeking to recall such a name. Sun. There is no such person here. Dr. Manson then proceeded to inform him that he was quite well aware that Sun was here, that he wished to inform the legation that the Foreign Office had been made cognizant of the fact, and that Scotland Yard was posted in the matter of Sun's detention. But a Chinese diplomatist is nothing if not a capable liar, and Tong's opportunity of lying must have satisfied even his Oriental liking for the role. With the semblance of truth in his every word and action, Tong assured his interrogator that the whole thing was nonsense and that no such person was there. His openness and frankness partly shook Dr. Manson's belief in my condition, and when he got back to Mr. Cantlie's he was so impressed with the apparent truthfulness of Tong's statement that he even suggested that the tale of my imprisonment might be a trick by myself to some end, he knew not what. Thus can my countrymen lie. Tong even shook the belief of a man like Dr. Manson, who had lived in China 22 years, who spoke the Amoy dialect fluently, and was thereby more intimately acquainted with the Chinese and their ways than 9/10 of the people who visit the Far East. However, he had to dismiss the thought, as no ulterior object could be seen in a trick of the kind. Tong is sure to rise high in the service of his country, A liar like that is sure to get his reward amongst a governing class who exist and thrive upon it. It was 7 o'clock on Sunday evening when the two doctors desisted from their labors, parted company, and considered they had done their duty. But they were still not satisfied that I was safe. The danger was that I might be removed that very night, especially since the legation knew the British government were now aware of the fact, and that if immediate embarkation were not possible, a change of residence of their victim might be contemplated. This was a very probable step indeed, and if it had been possible, there is no doubt it would have been accomplished. Luckily for me, the Marquis Sung, as he is called, had shortly before left London for China and given up his residence. Had it not been so, it is quite possible the plan of removal to his house would have recommended itself to my clever countryman, and when it was accomplished they would have thrown themselves upon the confidence and good friendship of the British and asked them to search the house. That ruse could not be carried out, but the removal to the docks was quite feasible. It was expected I was to sail on Tuesday, and as the ship must be now in dock, there was nothing more likely than that the "lunatic" passenger should be taken on board at night to escape the excitement and noise of the daily traffic in the streets. End of Chapter 5. End of Section 2.